I'm going to talk about a quite large study which I'm doing together with my colleagues, Peter Bergström and Marie. We are all working as associate professors at Umeå University, and it's funded by the Swedish Research Council. It's a longitudinal study which will go on for 3 years, and there is also a pre-study which I will tell a little bit about the results. The title, Student-Centered Learning Practices Explained by Relational Pedagogy. I'll get to that, why I wrote that title. The focus of the study is to explore student-centered learning practices in this very special. So this was actually 3 schools that were going to merge into one new school, which was being totally rebuilt and designed into an innovative learning environment. The motto was from teacher-centered teaching to student-centered learning practice, as well as becoming team teachers instead of having your own class. So instead of having classrooms, well, you have floors where the whole cohort is united and there's a team of teachers that are actually working together. There's a team of teachers that are actually working together with the whole group in new organizational ways. So here you can see the old corridor schools moving into this lower picture where there's more like an apartment style with different rooms with different aims. And this is framed as a chat, cultural historical activity theory, if you're familiar with that. So it's a change process where the participants is classrooms, which were designed with furniture that would then imitate this new school that was being designed. So it's all about questioning an idea, trying it out, modeling new solutions, and being supported in this through different steps. The aim of our longitudinal study is then to explore the student-centered learning and teaching practices that emerge in this, and in relation to the school design as an innovative learning environment, and then also organized in teams. When you look at student-centered learning, we found this Bremner's literature review going through over 300 studies talking about student-centered learning, learner-centered education, and these 6 summary of this huge literature review. Formative assessment, that's one thing. You continually talk to the student about where their level is and giving them also responsibility for their own assessment in some sense. And that relates to autonomy as well. Making the students take responsibility for their own learning. But it's also about adapting to needs and knowing where the student is and being flexible then in adapting to the needs of where the student is. Power sharing is a thing, and that's one part that we have focused a lot on. I'll tell you more about that. And then active participation and relevant skills. These are things that we will relate our results to and have it as part of sort of like a formative intervention, including the participants in understanding the concepts and making them part of their own evolution of the teaching practice. We have a mixed methods research design, so we have lots of different kinds of data and the pre-study then, which Peter collected data from, that was classroom observations and audio recordings, and then interviews with the teachers, and that's the pre-study I will tell you a little bit about. And then we added teacher questionnaire, some more data that we can relate to and understand what we see and get these also quantitative correlations about these concepts to understand them in a bigger picture. But it's very much about power and control distribution in the classroom, and how this is reflected in the teachers' interviews. And what we're going to look at then is how this changes over time, how the teachers talk about it, but also how they do in practice. So the first pre-study, the ones I'm going to present here now first, that's the prototype classrooms that Peter then observed, audio recorded the teachers talking, and then interviewed the teachers. So we have 9 teachers from 3 different schools. These are what the prototype classrooms look like. It was a lot about the furniture done, including the teachers in this process. These data then that we have both the teachers doing and then the teachers saying, asking questions how they did and why they did like they did. This was also a convergent mixed design, which then both quantified the qualitative data and had theoretical, deductive, thematic analysis. And we clustered the different, from the quantification, we clustered the teachers in different, how student-centered they were or not, then merged that into the qualitative. So I'll show you some of the results from this. The first, I'll tell you about Bernstein's classification and framing, because this was the deductive analysis that we used, and it was also part of how the interview schedule was designed to interview them about the classroom practice. So the classroom organization, then that's the classification, that's power, how the teacher distributes power or maintains power. And the framing then is about the control of the communicative practice, the instructional discourse in the classroom. So the quantification of the classroom data then is plotted in this matrix. So you actually find that this teacher is teacher and power control centered. Here is about shifting power and control. And these are the sub-themes within the classification and framing. We looked at in this from classroom observations or the audio recordings. You can hear how the teachers talk about instructional things like selection of content, sequencing, pacing, how fast they're doing stuff or what time they get, evaluation, how they discuss the evaluation with the students or do they maintain that themselves, the hierarchy in teacher-student communication, and then classification about the classroom organization, how the desks are placed. For instance, is it like this where the teacher is in front and it's teacher-centered, or are the furniture arranged differently in groups, for instance? How is the physical space boundaries? Are the students allowed distance, or do they maintain inside and so the teacher can keep an eye on them? And what kind of material boundaries are there? Tool control boundaries, who decides which application they're using, for instance, if they're using computers, and how the students are then boundaries. Can they work together? Can they choose where they sit, or are they straight in rows? So these are the clusters that we found: teacher maintaining power and control, the shifted power control, and shared power and control. And when you put them in the matrix then with all the codings of how they're talking, what they're doing in the classroom, this is how the 9 teachers then fell out within this matrix. And this, the biggest cluster here, the red one, it's actually, we've broken that into 2 as well in this process, but I'll talk about it as 3 at this point. And then the interview data, the teacher's reflections. Here, there was only one teacher in the teacher power and control, and this teacher removed the different furniture that she thought was not group, which was quite difficult to manage as how she explained it. So she put them in rows, the right person in the right place. That's what she said. She needed control. And she also explained it that she felt controlled from above the organization because she needed to get these students through. And so it was an interesting kind of expression about controlling someone because she felt controlled. This teacher also talked about the instructional discourse was about scaffolding students' understanding and giving examples like that, but not really discussing more teaching, for instance. Whereas in the next cluster of shifted power and control, this was still about this. One teacher said that there were two teachers. One said that, I walk over and I put my hand on the shoulder when we're reading, and that sort of maintains the calmness in the classroom, and I can manage behavior in that way. So it was still managing behavior, but in a more embodied way and moving around in the classroom. And this was also about scaffolding students' understanding, giving an example, but also discussing shared power and control was very much about reducing the space between teacher and student, either getting the students to come up and take control, or the teacher moving down and circling around and being more like a scaffolding coach. But also about talking, they talked about reading body language to adapt the space boundaries, both for in the learning situation, but also about reading emotions of the students. Well, I won't ask too many. I can see that he or she is not really in there today, so I'll step back a bit. So very much about reading the students in a more holistic sense in that. And in the instructional discourse, in this framing part, it was much about scaffolding student responsibility and autonomy. And well, if you want to get that grade, then you have to do this and this, and giving the responsibility and having the students themselves to choose and know what to do to the level they wanted to reach. So in that sense, it was about student empowerment, and that was part of that also, having this continuous formative assessment and discussions with them and adapting and support in relation to very much the learner needs. So coaching holistic learning, using probing, future-directed focus, where do you want to go, by using probing questions to other students so they can listen to how they replied instead of the teacher being the one explaining everything. So very interesting ways of building trust. The next phase then, that I'm gonna show some more data. The first phase in the new school, and we had the pandemic in between, so they actually got a few years before we could go there, and also before we got funded to do it. So they had a few years to practice, but like the principal said, they have taken it really, really slow because there have been so many restrictions as well. So it's not, they couldn't implement everything they wanted to implement. So we're more or less in the beginning. So here we're gonna talk about the questionnaires. This is a compiled questionnaire with somebody know perhaps from Norway, School Week and School Week. Do you know them? Yeah. So they talk about collective teaching, team efficacy, for instance, and collegial support. It's about shared, made that team cohesion or scale actually, because and I had to remove some items from some of the original scales because they didn't work so well. But so we call this team cohesion, but also shared values with the management and organization. And then it's all of these, psychological safety and organization. And then it's all of these, psychological safety in teams. Do you know about Amy Edmondson's work about psychological safety? So yeah, anyway, it's from the organizational side, but it's slipping into the school environment as well. It's a very interesting concept about how when you feel psychologically safe, and it's all about creating the learning atmosphere so that you're allowed to make mistakes. Autonomy, relatedness, work satisfaction, work engagement, stress tolerance, and adaptability. Those didn't work really well either, so we made them into one, and it's about resilience then. And then it's relational competence in teaching. And I was actually here last year presenting the questionnaire development on that study. We got 2 scales from questionnaire development with 5 items each, and it's called communicative competence and social emotional competence. It's actually about communicating towards the constructive and creating a positive constructive environment, and socio-emotional is about managing the difficult emotions and having strategies to handle these situations side to the positive side. So both, well, you can never remove yourself from the emotion. It's also always about, communication is always about the socio-emotional as well, right? Because we're communicating to other people. And then there's the last one, the innovative learning. And then there's the last one, the innovative learning environment school design is supportive for helping students. These are some variables where they rated them how they felt that the school design supported them in their teaching. So that was the teacher compiled questionnaire, and the student questionnaire is based on WIHIC, I don't know how you pronounce it. My colleague Maria was in charge of this one, and she has been using this study before. And we also had 2 variables, and I am satisfied with the teaching. It probably needs to be changed a little bit and made more intricate and specific, but these are the ones we had now. And 4 scales, I cooperate, I get involved and participate. The teacher supports me, and teacher supports my autonomy. So more about becoming more autonomous in my own learning. So the results from the first part, and as you saw, we have 252 students and 56 teachers, and that's basically every teacher. Correlations, when we had all students, everything correlated. It became more interesting when we combined the teachers and the students on team level, because they all belong to these huge teams and cohorts then. So then we can see that satisfied with teaching and doing well, these are so similar, of course they correlate. But the teacher supports me and I cooperate. That was correlating on student questionnaire. Teacher supports my autonomy, I get involved and participate. Those correlate also on a student level. But perhaps the very interesting thing is that when comparing them on the teacher's questionnaire, work engagement correlates with I cooperate and the teacher supports me. So work engagement seems to be very, very important so the socio-emotional competence correlates very well to teacher supports my autonomy. And my question to you maybe, what do you think that is all about? And how does that relate to relational pedagogy? Then you can also see on a teacher level, psychological safety correlates with work satisfaction. I feel safe in my team. I can say whatever I want. I can develop and make mistakes. It's also correlated to the design of the school and how the design of the school helps helping students. And socio-emotional and communicative competence, we know that those correlated because there's part of the same concept, the relational competence. But work satisfaction and team cohesion correlated, and team cohesion also with socio-emotional competence. Great at managing difficult situations and also having high team cohesion. That's kind of obvious in a sense, but good to know, right? Then we looked at teacher gender differences. Work satisfaction, work engagement. Women have work satisfaction, work engagement. Women have rated themselves higher in all all of these. Community competence, socio-emotional competence, and also team cohesion. Women are higher in all of these. And you can see we have 60 male teachers and 40 female teachers. There's no difference in teaching experience in these groups. There are no gender difference in students, and that's kind of nice, isn't it? Differences between high and low grades. So I separated the 4 to 6 grades because we have teacher data from all the way from preschool, but we only have 4 to 6 and 7 to 9. So there are differences in I get involved and participate. The teacher supports my autonomy. These are rated higher in the lower grades. And also, from the teacher's questionnaire, both communicative competence and socio-emotional competence, communicative competence and socio-emotional competence are rated higher in the lower grades. And so this raises the question also, why do teachers in the higher grades rate this competence lower? I just made these kind of interesting descriptions about team differences then. This is from the significance of involvement and participation according to grades. The gender, no difference. Autonomy support, also significant difference between the lower and high grades, and no gender difference. And teacher in the teacher questionnaire, and one was about challenges of student-centered learning. What do they feel are difficulties that they have to overcome? And these are also on team level, so the answers, so we know which team discuss different challenges. Difficult to motivate and inspire. I believe the students inspire. I believe the students should be led in their learning rather than leading it themselves. Problematic because they do not know what to learn. And desirable, but sometimes difficult to implement as some students are not mature enough. Different in different groups of pupils. The climate in the group must be right. Some pupils can be challenged more than others, but all can learn to plan their work at different levels. We have facilities where students with needs can get help if they want it. However, this requires the student in question to be active. And difficult to find the easiest, quickest route through lessons, and it is rarely by engaging. In collaboration with the students, I believe they learn best. However, it is a challenge with such large classes. So these are some challenges then. And this is actually a matrix from NViva, where you can get the affiliation of the respondent and related to how you coded the material. So there were challenges in teamwork and strengths with teamwork. These were the questions. And these are then the coded sub-themes. These are green and these are orange because NViva put the major theme all the way down. Then we can also discuss this with principals and the teams themselves because we know which team is describing these challenges, but also strengths. So I think there were a lot of strengths. The next step of the teacher workshop in August, we will go there to this school and have teacher workshop where it's called a double bind in this chat work process, where you are mirroring theoretical concepts to them and they can discuss their what they find as challenges and then to overcome or plan around or innovate new solutions in understanding how we can evolve the environment. So these 6 are then based on this Brenner's literature review, and we will use these concepts then to let them plan student-centered lesson, which we then can come and observe. And so they actually plan it according to the concepts, theoretical concepts that define this. And then also, of course, related to how does the physical environment support this. I really like these earlier presentations today. I wrote down the environment is the third teacher, very interesting, and the environment is actually, how was it? The environment is your learner's skill or no? But it was. It's interesting because we're looking at this from sort of also a socio-material approach where you see the environment as an interactive agent in the process of developing teaching practice. So, thank you. I think I'm right on time, am I not? So I put this, I love making snow labyrinths, and I find this very illustrative of the process of especially mixed methods. When you go in a labyrinth and where do you come out, you don't really know. So, questions?